Good morning, Bill.
Good morning, Bill. How are you, sir?
Doing pretty good. We were talking off air and decided let's just turn the camera on.
Let's just turn the camera on. Let's not waste all this
Yeah,
material, all this
that's right.
commentary on just ourselves. We were talking
Yeah,
about sales books.
we were. But first, how was your weekend?
My weekend was good. Didn't really do much of anything. Slept really weird on Friday night, so I woke up Saturday feeling kind of like funky, and I slept too much. And so then Sunday, the balance of that, like I was up at like 6:30, and the rest of my household was a slumber until 10:30. So I got some good, just kind of solo time. Did some reading, things like that.
Mhm.
Other than that, did nothing. Did some gaming. Very, very easy
Good.
going. You?
Great. That's greatness. Yeah, I went
Yeah.
out to the ranch, so I also did a lot of nothing.
I saw the thing. Okay, so when you go out to the ranch, right? Because you're
Mhm.
back today. Like I was
Mhm.
kind of half expecting you to show up with like the ranch background behind you and
Yeah,
everything.
yeah.
How long does it take you to get out there? Hour and a
Oh,
half,
it's not
two
bad.
hours?
Yeah, under 2 hours. Just depends on traffic.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, it's an hour and 35 or hour and 40, and then
Okay,
sometimes it's over two because of traffic. But
yeah, interesting.
yeah, it's not a bad
Okay,
drive at all. And I'm
nice.
going from the opposite side of the metroplex. So if I lived like in Plano or something, it would take me, you know,
That's fair. Yeah.
an hour maybe
Hmm.
or
Very
less.
interesting.
Yeah. So
So,
I did very little. I sat on back porch, stared at sunset, sunrise a few days, and drank lots of coffee,
yes.
and hung out with my daughter because my son had homecoming this weekend. So
Oh,
it was
wow.
his first dance, anything experience because he's 16 and he
Whoa.
got invited. So yeah, so he stayed back, and then we had already been planning to go uh, out there. So just my daughter and I went. So that was awesome because I got to have lots and lots of just one-on-one time with her, uh,
Nice.
and lots of just casual conversation too. So it was
Hmm.
awesome.
Man, that's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yep. Good morning, Dylan.
Good morning, Dylan.
Yep. So yeah, I'd say.
Um,
And so when you said nothing, like on Sunday, same. I just sat around and stared at the wall and enjoyed it.
do you get the same amount of recharge when you're doing nothing um, at like someplace like the ranch that like isn't your space as you would if you were just in your space alone?
That's a good question. I get more there, but I think it's
Oh,
because it's the
interesting.
environment. Like I see I know where you're going with that. Like I typically get more. It wouldn't work that way many places, is what I'm saying.
That makes sense. Okay.
But because I mean, essentially, it's my space too. It's just it's
Hmm.
my parents, and it'll be mine. When they pass on, it'll be
Hmm.
my space.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, nature helps me. So
Interesting. So if it wasn't the nature component, but you just had like a piece of land out there, do you think you would get the same benefit?
no, mm-mm.
Interesting. Okay.
No, like that the atmosphere of the place also is a big uh, not benefactor. I'm
Benefit?
thinking of the word. It's a big benefit, but it's a part of it that makes it so enjoyable
Okay. That
with
makes
all the
sense.
animals around, and you know the untouched space is part of it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah.
Interesting. Cool.
So anyway, I did some
Yeah.
reading. That was part of
Yeah.
one of the things that I did.
Hmm.
Is I'm reading a book that you have been talking about reading. I think it's in your stack somewhere, but
It's in my stack somewhere. Yeah. That's
yeah, I
the
finally made it to it in my stack.
this book has been on my stack for a while, right? Because it's a big book in the world of selling,
It is.
and then I don't know. I don't really like how the guy comes across in his other content, right? So I've been putting it off and putting it off, but like it keeps being talked about. So I'm like, you know what?
Mhm.
If everyone is talking about it at this level, I should go read it. So I'm going to. It's probably going
Yeah.
to be next at the next one, but
Yeah, you'll
gap
enjoy it.
selling by
Gap selling,
Keenan.
that's right, and you'll enjoy it because
Hmm.
it's he's very in line with a lot of the things you say. So it'll just be one of those books where you're like, yeah, I've heard all that, and hopefully you'll get some sort of new phrase or new
Yeah,
nugget on the way he talks about
that
discovery that
if I
versus
can
you.
get if I can get one nugget these days, then I'm good because there's not that much that's new. But a new anecdote, a new method, a slightly different approach. I'm currently listening to Spin Selling, which is a new one for me, maybe Dylan. In Spin Selling, they're talking about how all the like their kind of line in the sand is that the things that work for you in a very transactional retail sale don't work for you in a bigger, more complex long-term
Right.
sale, right?
Right.
Which
Right.
is true, right? Like you can't pressure someone into a $100,000 software purchase in the first call. What do we got to do? Will you sign this today? Like all of that stuff that you see like in commodity selling and widget selling, like you never even get to that point, right, in a big complex sale, because like you're just
Yep.
coming across too needy, too pushy, all these things. And so they're talking about open-ended questions, overcoming objections, and there's another part of it that they're like, yeah, while this is super beneficial in lower level selling, at higher level selling, it actually works actively against you, which are things that I've been saying this entire time. That if you can't you know if you can't do it differently, you're not going to get bigger deals. And everything just has to be done as a commodity, which just puts a bunch of pressure on the deliverables, and usually leads to uncomfortable scope creep and conversations and all that stuff. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I think it was my daughter that said, "Hey, Dad, are you reading another book on sales?" And I said, "Yeah, I am." And she said, "Why don't you just read one book and use it good?"
How did you respond to that?
I said, That's a good point, honey. Why, do you just do all your things one way?" And she was like, "Well,
Hmm.
I guess not." And I said, The truth is there's different ways to sell to different types of products and things." And she goes, "Oh, I guess that makes sense." And then she walked
And
out.
then that was it.
That was it.
That's hilarious to me. Good morning, Mike. There was one time, this is a long time ago. Like I hadn't gone into business for myself yet. This is probably
And like,
2015 or 16 maybe, right? So like I'm in the middle of the path, right? Like I'm like working with my coach. I'm still at the Kung Fu school. There's all this overlap between these things, and I'm just blown away by it, like losing my mind. I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. And Melissa one day she goes, hey, I have a question for you. And I was like, okay. She goes, when are you done with the sales coaching thing? I was like in my head, I just instantly go to, this is going to be an interesting conversation. Let's just see what happens with this thing.
Mhm.
And I said, what do you mean? And she goes, well, kind of feels a bit like a gimmick. And I was like, oh, okay, tell me more about that. Like, why do you feel that way? And she goes, well, blah, blah, blah. And she kind of talked about it for a little bit. And I was like, you know what I find fascinating about this conversation? And she goes, what? And I said, you have never once come up and asked me when I was going to be done with the Kung Fu thing. So my answer is the same, right? I will stop going to Kung Fu when I think that I can improve by being in that environment. I will stop going to sales training when I feel like I can't improve in that environment anymore. But as
Right.
long as it's providing an ROI and making me better, I'm going to go.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and it was just such an interesting conversation that to
Mhm.
me it's like you don't get to a skill level and then just stay there, right? Because if it's a skill, it diminishes things change, right? Like when I was a poker player, these little trends would come about in the space, right? And one of the big things was just like being aggressive, right? Because when you're aggressive, you're putting other people out of their comfort zone, you're putting them back on their heels. There's a huge metaphor for fighting in this thing, and there's a huge metaphor for selling in certain circles as well around this thing. And but so you could just show like almost unbridled aggression. I'm going to raise before the flop. I'm going to bet the flop. I'm going to raise pre-flop. I'm going to bet the flop. And you're going to win the majority of hands because people don't know what to deal with it. And
Right.
then all of a sudden, everyone knows what to deal with it, right?
Right.
So let's pretend that you're one of these players, right? You take 6 months to a year off, and then you come back to the game. The stuff that was working for you before has shifted,
Yep.
right? The things that were working for you in sales 5 years ago have shifted. The things that were working in 2019 have shifted, right? So there's a keeping your skill set sharp, keeping on top of like what the best practices are, what is actually working in the space and what actually isn't, because we'll just go out there and sell, right? And then you see all these people who are creating sales content about the nuance and how hard it is, especially right now, to get the meetings you want and save yourself time and everything else like this. It's fascinating, right? So it's always changing and improving, and little shifts are happening, right? And the people who were, well, I sold Cutco knives back in the early aughts. Cool. That's not this.
Right.
Not even close, right? So I don't know. It's a very interesting thing, and like it baffles me whenever any person talks about, well, yeah, I did this thing a long time ago, but like I'm still that good at it. No, you're not. Like, there was someone who was talking about the reason why they write for LinkedIn daily is because when they skip a day, it creates a little bit of like, okay, what do I want to talk about today? Right? Skipping one day makes them a little less ease, or creates a little less ease when it comes to that moment of like putting the pad to the paper and like creating that piece of content, right? Like
Right.
this, chop wood, carry water, do it daily. Don't have emotions about it. Do it to the best of your ability and then move on.
Yes. Yes, exactly. So I'm curious what you think the line is between, for example, knowing good sales principles and just those being strong,
Mm-hmm.
and knowing application of said principles. What's the difference in keeping one or both of those sharp?
That's a really good question. Ask me the question again.
Well, what came up in my head was principles don't change necessarily. If they're good
Correct.
principles, they're the principles.
Mm-hmm.
But the application of the principles changes.
The application. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
do you need to excuse me, do you need to the question is, do you need to practice the principles as much as the skills? Like the application of the skills?
I would say yes, right? Because um, there's this thing in kung fu, right? There's always this way of kind of like looking at it and kind of grading, is it right? Like is it within canon, or is it not, right? In the art that I studied, Wing Chun, you can look at only a couple of different fundamental principles, and if you're following one of these three fundamental principles, you are reacting with good kung fu, right? And if you're not reacting with one of these three principles, if you don't see how this movement connects to one of these three things, you're not doing good kung fu. You're probably acting emotionally and things like that. So same thing happens in selling. The more you know your frameworks, the more you own that stuff, the better off you're going to be. But you still have to be able to practice those things for those emotional moments, right? Like the guy who's done the flying armbar, right, in UFC fights 1,000 times is still going to do a couple of reps of doing that flying armbar before the next fight, just to make sure that it's still tight and that he can still do it. But he's still thinking about his framework of how he approaches that engagement, that altercation, and stuff like that. So I think the more you know your frameworks, the more you can kind of self-serve and kind of work on your own to maintain your level of like ownership and all that stuff. But you do have to practice on both sides of it. Like, you can know that in jujitsu, you want to be in control of the fight, right? Okay, great. Be in control of the fight. What movements are you going to be doing in the fight to make sure you maintain that advantage, right? So there's the framework of knowing these things, and then there's the ways of actually doing them in the moment of that thing. They're not exactly the same, right? Same thing in poker. You want to play in late position, and you want to play with cards that have huge edges over other people. Great. You still need to practice the discipline of sitting for potentially 2 hours and folding every hand and not letting that wild hair like creep up and cost you a bunch of money when you have deuce five and you've just decided to go break it off in somebody. Like there are these moments to where the knowledge has got to be mapped to the resiliency of actually like sitting there and doing those things. Like, yeah, to me, it's all tied together. You can't have one without the other.
Yeah, for sure. I think I was thinking of it as when you're learning a framework, you're practicing every day,
Mm-hmm.
and then once you have had a fair amount of time in the framework, it starts becoming familiar, and then you can back off on the everyday practice, and maybe like once a week, you're
Yes, exactly. Yeah,
stopping drift essentially.
absolutely. Yeah, and there's a difference between like learning mode and then maintenance mode, right? Just
Right.
like because like I talk about this in the keto diet is always the metaphor that I use, right? Because like in the beginning, it's hard to get into ketosis. It takes like multiple days and everything else like this. But then once you've been there for a while, right? And like when you first get into ketosis the first time, like you smell a donut, it's going to kick you out,
Yeah.
because your body just isn't used to that yet, right? And
Yeah.
so, but then with time, right? Like I've known people that have run a mostly keto diet for years and years and years, and like it takes a fair amount to get them knocked out of ketosis now at this point, so
Yeah.
they have a little bit of buffer, they have a little bit of thing. So For sure, right? When you're learning, it should be daily. It should be as often as you can get it, as often as you can practice with a practice partner who's worth working with. And then eventually it does get to that point to where you don't need as much reinforcement to stay at the level. So, but most of us tell ourselves that that's actually happening way, way earlier than it actually is, right? The line in Kung Fu is the master will do 100 reps and be content with getting 99 of them wrong, and then doing 100 more and being okay with only getting 98 of them wrong. Like, that's the Kung Fu path, right? And we have people over here who are like, cool, did that role play one time, coach, I'm good to go.
Right.
No, that's not how this works.
Yep, exactly. Yep. If it's not on your calendar, it's not big. It's not. You're probably not doing it right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yep.
We'll swing off, and something else will distract us, even if we have good intentions. But when it's on your calendar, when it's part of a routine that happens with or without you,
yeah,
that's when you know you're on the right path.
That's the best thing about Sales Practice Lab for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that I know that I'm going to have to get in there and kind of talk through my understanding of how I apply these things, right?
Yep.
Which gives me some polishing on my own skill set, right? As well as polishing on delivering these ideas to people who never heard them before. Like, that's a unique thing. I'm reading this philosophy book right now, and okay, so bear with me for a second. They say the measure of a philosopher is the ability to deliver something with less maximums, right? With less kind of, well, you could go this way, this way, this way. Okay, great. What is one way that can encompass more of that stuff? Can you zoom out a little bit, right? And so I've been thinking a lot about that, because everyone talks about time to impact. How quickly can you cause impact in someone's life and their role and things like that by having them work with you? And both these things have been kind of interesting, right? And I've been kind of trying to play with, can I get someone to the place with just like an onboarding session where they can come in, hit Sales Practice Lab cold, and have like a really great first interaction. Like, what do I need to do from an onboarding perspective, from an education perspective, so that way they can come in there, have an amazing first session, right? Because otherwise I'm just kind of potentially dropping people in and just kind of hoping that they get it and stuff like that. So I think we're going to be building out kind of like an onboarding into Sales Practice Lab, which I think would be cool and helpful for people and stuff like that. So yeah, I just like this idea. As a coach, of course I'm selling, right? Like, that's table stakes, right? If you're a sales coach and you're not selling, you're wrong, in my opinion, right? You're on a path to guru that is unavoidable, because you're not actually doing the work anymore, right? It's only a matter of time before you become outdated because you're not doing it. So, the things that I get more excited about are not when I close a deal or anything, and I don't go on social and start bragging about, I closed this deal. That's what's supposed to happen. I get the way that I measure my success is the outcomes of the people that I'm coaching. Right. Because it's great that Michael Jordan can hit all these shots. Can he teach someone else to do a shot? That's way more indicative of his ability as a coach and less about his performance. Right. And people are like, well, I only want to work with someone who's done it. You might not, honestly, because they might just do the thing where they just talk louder and slower at you, but they can't actually teach you anything. They can't actually get you over a hump, right? Or the worst thing that happens is there's a bunch of consultants who show up and they think that they're really great coaches and consultants for sales, but they can't explain the methods that they're teaching to these people. So the client only gets benefit when the coach is engaged with them, right? But then the coach goes away and everyone just kind of falls back down to the level that they were, because they weren't given any kind of frameworks for like repeatability or like ownership outside of the coach. The coach is there as lubricant almost, right? Well, you remove the lubricant and they're not there anymore. Coach is supposed to bring in frameworks and scaffoldings, that way people can be improved even when they're not attached to them anymore. There's a lot of sales coaches who are not able to do that.
Yep, it's true. You got to give people essentially stair steps.
Yes.
So if they can walk up, and then you have to tell them particular steps, or like, this step's particularly hard on you the first time, so watch this step. When I leave, still go up and down that step.
Absolutely, right? Like, hey, your punch seems a little stiff, right? So you need to do a whole bunch of them. Okay, great. And then eventually you'll get this kind of like movement quality that they can see that you don't even know yet, right? Like, I can hear on a call, right? Like, we were doing some role plays on Thursday, right? Brand new person. I talked about this last week, and she was struggling a little bit. And I'd written out the framework that we were working on, and then I'm just like listening like this, like I've got my eyes closed, like I'm like playing a piano solo or something like this, and I'm just like, ooh, they said struggle, right? They said struggle. They said I really don't like this. Okay, cool. These are the things you ask about. Oh, why is that such a struggle for you? Well, because, and then they just can't wait, right? But it's about really listening for certain things, cluing into those, and building the conversation around those things that is also tied to the framework. So when, it's all made in discovery, and the better you can listen, because the more you own your framework, right? In the beginning, you're going to have probably 80% of your awareness on the framework. What am I going to say next? What am I going to say next? If they say this, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to do this. Great. You're only listening with probably 20% of your awareness. The goal is to do this enough so that way you can listen with 80% and only have to put 20% of your awareness into the framework and the next step and what should you be doing, because you know it that well, right? The only way you get there is by practice.
I was gonna say, and there's no magic elixir that will get you that flip that you want without just repetition.
Without just repetition. Like, you can read every poker book on the planet, and until you sit at that table, online or in person, you do not actually know what is going to happen in that thing, because you've not been tested. You don't know about the emotional kind of boundaries of playing poker. Same thing happens in sales. You know what I'm going to say when I'm going to tell them? I'm going to read the script exactly, and then you're going to walk up and they're going to be like, "So, how was Saturday?" And you're like, "Well, that's not on my script."
Mm-hmm.
Now, what are you going to do?
Yep.
Right. So, yeah,
and that's where the 10,000 hours kind of whole philosophy comes from, right? It's not necessarily 10,000 hours to become a master at something. It just means you have to sit and do so many repetitions that, and have logged so many hours that you've seen the situation over and over and over and over and over, and you can now probably closer to the 10%, right? You can listen 90% of the time and only need 10% of your brain for the framework. That's only comes with the ability to chop wood, carry water over time.
Yeah.
So you can't speed that process up. You can shortcut it with good coaching,
yes,
and things like that. But the hours
and purposeful
have to be
practice,
logged.
right? Yeah. Like, too many people, when it comes to I've talked about this somewhere, but there was a woman. So I was a band nerd in high school, right? And I was an okay band nerd. I wasn't the best. I wasn't the worst. And there was a woman who played flute. Her name was Terry Austin. Her name's changed now because she's been married, and I don't remember what it is. But she was the top flute player, like phenomenal, right? And so one day I'm just kind of dorking around, and I'm just kind of playing these licks that I know very well to kind of warm up my lip and everything. And there is something to like you doing that stuff as a horn player. And she goes, "I always see you playing the same things, and like things that you're pretty good at." I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "You're here practicing. Shouldn't you be practicing stuff you're not good at?" And I was like, "Well," right. And I went down this huge, big justification path and everything. But she's fundamentally right.
Yeah.
Lots of people practice at improving in their craft badly because it's tied to their ego. It's tied to these things. So they're going to spend a whole lot of time doing things that they're already strong at. There were things when it comes to the thing that I do that I'm good at. I don't need to practice those. I don't need to KPI the things that I'm good at or the things that I'm going to do willingly. It's the things that I'm bad at that I need to go practice. It's the things I'm going to avoid that I need to KPI. You're only going to find those things when you go back and you watch your tape. When you have a perfect feedback loop that you cannot argue with.
Yeah, I think that's where you start stepping into advanced training, repetition and stuff like that, because you still do the reps of the stuff that you're good at, because it keeps it nice and smooth, right? Yeah. But then when you go, okay, now it's time to practice, that was like warm up. I did the easy stuff was warm up. Okay, I got to get those reps in anyway. Let's just get those in the beginning. Now let's work on the things that are really still causing me some friction, and that's what you spend your practice time on.
Yeah.
And then even more so when you're reading these performance books now, they will actually break down and segment the pieces of stuff that they're bad at, and they'll practice pieces of the piece so that that's just because you can get the reps faster in to the and then get that piece down, and then next piece, so it's Legos in the brain.
It is. And there's this line that my kung fu teacher always said, because I'd be like, Sifu, I want to learn more. I want to learn more. I want to learn more. And he goes, you can do one thing at a time. Right. And in the beginning in kung fu, like that one thing is just standing in your stance for like a little bit longer. right? Because your like legs are trembling, like you don't have the musculature yet or anything like this, and you're just kind of like, and then all of a sudden one thing can be standing in that stance, adjusting your stance in the middle of it, blocking and attacking at the same time. This can all become one thing, but it can only become one thing when you've trained all those 5 individual components separately to a place of where you can kind of like be thinking about when these, Voltron, right? They all come together and build this thing. But you have to be able to break it down into small chunks, right? I mean, no one comes into sales practice lab and I'm like, all right, cool. Run an entire call front to back for me.
Right.
Let's just kind of do like that. That would be too much. It wouldn't be useful. No one else would probably benefit from that. So we've taken it and broken into very small chunks. So that way we can get like 2 to 3 reps in a session, as opposed to one person getting 1 session because the rep is so big.
Yep.
So yeah.
Exactly.
Smaller chunks, right? Just like with anything else. This is the reason why tech has got the BDR to the AE model, because it's a lot easier to train people on just prospecting and outreach and then saying, hey, figure this thing out, and then you can become an AE, right? And so they kind of turn it into this badge of honor thing. Well, the thing that's hard is that prospecting and outreach is difficult. It's the hardest part of sales to get salespeople to do. And then on top of that, it removes some of the emotional buy-in, some of the things that I talk about. If you don't have to do the closing, if you have to pass it off to someone else, and then there's a collaborative moment of like, okay, great. What are we talking about with this client? Why, what do they want? What are their pain points? How are we going to help them out? They get to train less of these, of the entire skill set, and have a pipeline of like upward mobility. And the training is a lot easier as well. So
yep,
there's a reason why it works. There's lots of problems with it, obviously, but it is.
Yeah, in theory, it's a good way to do it.
It can be done very, very, very well. It's hard to do well, but it can be done well.
Yeah, for sure. Cool.
I mean, you got me all wound up. It's like Monday. Like I'm like in here. I'm like already like. I feel like Lewis Black almost. Like I'm just over here, just like shouting at people, like moving my hands around all wildly and everything.
You get the growl too, like him. Well, then, what's today like for you? What have you got going on?
Today's some planning. I set a call on a Monday for my new client to have like a weekly sync, at least in the beginning, right? So we're kind of talking about the build out, what we're going after, what progress we're making, and stuff like that. So I have that call. That's gonna be a weekly call on Mondays, and then I have a call with a client to kind of touch in and touch base. He said, John, he goes, things are getting better. I can't say for sure that this is tied to you, but it does seem like some things are starting to shift in our pipeline. And I'm like, cool, I am totally down to dig in and look at that and see if it is me or if it is tied to something else. So have that call. And then I'm doing a podcast recording with someone from the Sherpa Slack who I met on Lunch Club. I think we're talking about the book launch specifically. I think that's what she wanted to kind of dig into. So that's the day, and then lots of planning and thinking and writing and journaling and all that other stuff. You?
I had 2 Lunch Club no-shows last week.
You did? Whoa. So I had 1 last week.
Man, I can't win for losing when it comes to Lunch Club. Like, I'm going in. Nobody showed.
I had 3 last week. 2 of them rescheduled. 1 of them made. On the one that made, I was his second call, and I was like, oh my gosh, man, like I'm so excited, because I do get so excited about it. Like it's not like a fake or manufactured thing or not, because it has been, when I zoom out and I look at all the possible ways to network digitally, that is by far the best platform that I've gotten when it comes to networking with cold prospects who don't know who I am. Like, so am I going to get some people who don't show up? Sure. Am I going to get some people who are going to hit it and be like, how can I help you? And how can you help me? Sure. Right. Like, and largely those won't lead to anything. Right. However, sending messages on LinkedIn to people who don't know me, and I'm wearing a sales label, right? Outcomes are lesser without me promising the moon and stuff like this, which I don't really want to do, because I don't even know if there's anything to talk about yet.
Yeah. Yep.
So.
Yep. Exactly. It's a very smart way to set things up. I was always impressed by it, by the way, that they let out. So you can't control people, though.
You can't. They're chaos machines.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's right. Why would you even try to hold on to that? That doesn't make any sense to me. Go find, like, that's why you can always turn back to doing something else whenever someone ghosts you, right? And people are like, man, I'm so mad, and they just want to like kind of be upset for the next hour. Find something else to do.
Right. Have a backup plan
Have a
always.
backup plan for
Yeah,
sure.
that's why I always bring a book with me wherever I go in public. I always have a book in my car. If
Mhm.
something a schedule breaks down, okay.
Yep. And this is why you run a deeper pipeline than you think you're going to need, right? If you need to close 5 deals this quarter, you need to have 15 to 20 in your pipeline because stuff happens. It doesn't always close on your timeline. And when we don't do a good job of having the depth necessary to allow for drop-offs, we're creating the emotional thing that makes us anxious and upset as salespeople. Like
Yep.
my coach, I remember one time he goes, how do you feel about the quarter? Right? We're looking at my pipeline, and I was like, I feel okay. And he goes, how many of these do you need to close? And I'm like, all of them. And he goes, how do you feel about that? And I said, well, a little nervous. And he goes, okay, cool. Go out and put more in your pipeline. And so I'm like, okay. So I go out and do what I say. So next week I come back and I've added more deals to the pipeline. He goes, how do you feel? I said, good. He goes, go get more. Right. So for the next like 6
Yeah.
weeks that I saw my coach, he was like, go put more in your pipeline, go put more in your pipeline, go put more in your pipeline. And so then finally I came in one day and he was like, okay, how do you feel now? And I was like, I feel like I can't even hold it all. And he goes, okay, cool. Now you really like, how are you going to fix that problem? Because this
Right.
is where you should be.
Right.
And I was like, I'm supposed to be here. And he goes, no, this is the volume you need for you to be really discerning about who you're going to spend your time with. And I was like, oh, right. And that's where like the CRM thing became such an important thing because you shouldn't be able to hold it all in your head. If you can hold every detail of every one of the deals in your pipeline in your head, your pipeline
Right.
is not deep enough.
Right. And that's actually
So,
where lead scoring because lead scoring I think is overused, but that's where lead scoring is actually really valuable because you have
yeah.
a whole lot of stuff going on and you've put a lot of data in, and then now you have something that can tell you, oh, okay, now I can really
Mhm.
go look at this top section,
Yeah.
and
And
spend my time the right
you
way.
you call it lead scoring, which is much more of the marketing term, right? In sales, it's called qualifying. Are these leads qualified? Are the people that you've spent
Wait a
3
minute.
or 4 meetings with? Hold on a second, right?
Qualifying is way different.
Why?
Well, because qualifying means I'm looking to see if we should be having a conversation. Lead scoring is how you take the qualified conversation and prioritize it. It's just prioritizing your qualifying.
I
Because I am
mean,
talking about the sales funnel. Because I'm talking about salespeople sitting in, their pipeline, going, okay, if I can only spend 2 hours today on the phone and I have 100 people in front of me, which 20 am I reaching out to?
yeah.
Hopefully your CRM is going to do something for you that helps you distinguish which ones are in a better spot to go reach out to and still go qualify, right? Because once you get into that conversation, you're going to qualify them. Now, you may
Well,
qualify them one to one,
hmm.
but I guess the situation I'm talking about is that you already have them in your CRM. And you go, okay, which one should I be talking to?
Yeah, I mean, uh,
So same
so
concept, different.
I think so, maybe.
Okay.
Like I think about it the same because, if if the phone rings at the same time and it's both of your leads calling you back, right? The qualifying salesperson knows which one of those meetings has more value for them, right? And also which one is probably going to have more alignment, and they're going to prioritize that
Yeah.
call and not the one that requires more time, more effort,
Right.
more
Right.
education. So,
And that's what I'm hoping a lead score helps you do without having to sit there and process all that in your brain on the spots. When both calls come in,
mhm.
you can just go, oh, well, this one is an 82 and this is a 65. This is the one I would answer.
Well, that's where knowing your steps, right? Like before we turned on the call, I had a pipeline here on my board, and there were stages to it, right? Part of knowing where to spend your time is knowing where they are in that process, and also holding yourself accountable to that process. So if you show up for a first call, first call is just basically like light discovery and like needs assessment. Have a great Monday, Michelle. Thank you. And then they're coming in, they're asking for a customized demo, and that's not normally like you don't even know to say no to that when you're new. You don't even know to say
Right.
no to that before you're like activity driven and using a process and using pipeline steps. You're just going to do whatever people ask you to do, or you might not, in which case you might come across like a bit abrasive and stuff. So like I think it's all tied together. Like lead scoring to me kind of raises my it doesn't raise my hackles per se, but like it makes me a little bit nervous because, well, this lead is graded at 80%, so therefore you should close at 80%. Okay, where does that stuff come from?
Yeah, that's different though.
Yeah.
Yeah. I the way I've always looked at that sort of situation is when you're trying to take an MQL to an SQL. So
Hmm.
these leads have come in. We think they're good. what sort of activity has gone on to so that we know that when the phone rings or if we have to reach out, right?
Okay.
Which one is better to pick up and talk to?
Fair. So how does a marketer know if a lead is good or not?
Oh gosh, that's a big conversation. It depends is the answer. All right, guys. We'll see you
See
Friday.
ya. Have a good day, everybody.
That's a famous marketing line, right? It depends.
It does, but like, so at some point, right? And this is why having a salesperson, especially as you're doing your build out and progressively moving that salesperson deeper and deeper and deeper into the process, in my opinion, makes a lot of sense. Because in the beginning,
Yeah.
you don't know that the assumptions you're making about your audience are true unless someone has sat there and talked to them. Like,
Yep, exactly.
and any marketer who wants to show up or any salesperson who wants to show up and be like, you know what, we just got this, and they don't want to go talk to some people and like start from
Right.
the happy customer base and the failed customer base and kind of working backwards from that, is doing themselves a disservice. I don't care how many times you've done it. You still can instantly shave off your improvement cycles by going and just having those open and honest conversations. Don't do a $25, give us your feedback and everything else like that. Your salespeople are having these conversations, right? So in the beginning, have a lead form and then a salesperson calling those people. Okay, great. What do you need? What do you need? What do you need? Maybe they need a webinar. Okay, great. Lead form to webinar, salesperson after that. Okay, great. What do you need? What do you need? What do you need? What do you need? Okay, great, great, great. And then you can build out your process that way, because your salespeople are there hearing what they need next, hearing where the gaps are, what's causing these people to like not be ready to move forward. You can build that out while trying to keep the salesperson's time at a premium, because it still needs to be at a premium because it's a human.
Yep. Well, my actual answer to that is if you have a sales process and you know what are indicators of someone that are interested, but based on the fact of what you just talked about, we've talked to happy and sad customers, if you will. We know the paths. We know what they do when they leave. We know what they do when they buy. So a good lead is someone who's showing signals early on in the process of good buyers. Now, that's why I say it depends, because that can be a lot of different things. But if you know who your customer is, and you know the types of things that they normally go through when they're going to buy, and they start to show those signals, that's how we start grading and going, okay, they've shown quality and quantity, not one or the other.
Yeah, willing and able.
Yes, willing and able.
Yeah.
Bant, just it depends, what language you're using, right? So.
Oh, did you say Bant?
Yeah.
Oh man, it's so funny because people get a hold of these ideas and they're like, "Oh my god, this is such an amazing idea," and then they just go around and they use it in the most ham-fisted way, right? Are you aware of us, right? And they'll just, it takes a while before you can ask the question in a way that is not the most blunt. Do you have budget for this?
Yes.
Right? Well,
what's your timetable?
Yeah, exactly.
What would you say your timetable is?
Yeah.
Who uses timetable, bro? Are you from like 1938? Timetable.
Were they saying timetable in 38?
That just seems like an old thing to me. Like someone who's sitting across from an old Alexander Graham Bell, like talking about the timetables of the new sections of posts going up.
Yeah, I think we call them Gantt charts now, maybe.
Yeah.
Are you the decision maker, right? Yeah, that's a very common one as well.
Yeah,
and people are just so they're just so focused on effort and volume that they're not thinking about the quality side of it, which is
well, it's the whole only using the script versus using the principle.
That's very fair. Yes,
so you lean on the words.
So. Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, I got to get wrapped and get onto my day.
Yes.
I'm assuming you do too.
I do. Yeah, absolutely. What's your time frame? Interesting. I say timeline. I don't say time frame. Do I say time
frame's an older way of.
Yeah, I just say timeline.
Yeah.
Question of price or value.
I think I change it. I think I change it because it just depends on the conversation.
Mike Tao, are you from 1938? Are you are you a time traveler?
Or am I just making this up and people still use it? Because I'm like, hey, when do you get this done by? What are we talking about here? It just depends. Like, I use more casual language.
Oh yeah, for sure, sure. Yeah, that's your. Like, I love, like, I love certain words because of the sterility. Is that the right word? Sterility? Is that how you say that? I'm not much older than you. Um, I love the clean nature, right? Assessment. I love that word because it's like, ooh, that's like academic. That means clean. It means pure. And people are like, I don't want to be assessed.
Exactly.
Okay, so find your style, right? And then
Yeah.
sales process was another one. What is a sales process? Well, how about a playbook? Like
Yeah.
when you join the team, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so
It all
fascinating to
depends.
me.
Yeah.
And I wasn't even aware that I was doing a terrible job of like if this was a client, why are you letting your ego run wild with your language? And like I wasn't even aware that I was making it difficult,
Yeah.
kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So that's been an interesting evolution.
I think that's part of the nuance too, right? Is you gotta know who you're talking to and kind of try and understand where they're coming from and meet them where they're at. Not
Mhm.
change your language, but at least soften it maybe in certain spots and
Yeah,
adjust when it's. But that's once again, that's nuanced
yeah,
type of
for sure. Mhm.
approach there.
Because you can do way too much, and then all of a sudden you're in an organization that doesn't really feel like yours anymore, right? So at some point you kind of have to draw the line about what's important. But I think too many people get hung up on things that aren't important, especially early on.
Yep.
And the more intelligent they are, the more rigid they become around, you know, John. We used to hear this all the time in web, John, because I'd be like, hey, do you want us to go bring in one of our copywriting partners so we can get this thing done faster? And the words written by a professional. No one can talk better about my business than I can. I'm like, okay, cool. What's your time frame for getting the content in?
Yeah.
Uh, give me 2 weeks. Okay, great. A year and a half later,
Yep.
how's it going? Oh man, oh man, oh man. Still
Yeah.
working on it, but we're close. What does close
Yeah.
mean?
I watched a great sales call moment when I was early on when I was training this job,
Mhm.
and this guy was talking about how you need to hire a content writer based on the work that we're doing, blah 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 blah. And he goes, "Well, we're good at writing, uh, you know, on the internal." He goes, "Oh, really? How much have you written?" He goes, "Oh, we've got probably 60 posts ready." He goes, "Ready? What does that mean?" And he said, "Well, they're written and they're sitting there and they've been. How long have they been sitting there? 4 months. Really? Why have you posted them?" And you see the prospect go, "I get your point." He said, "That's why you need someone in charge of content."
That is why. Like, a client, he does strategic stuff, right? So he's showing up, he's helping people with strategy and everything. And then he's like, yeah, I'm wrapping up an engagement. I said, cool, dude. Do you think they need your help getting all this stuff done? What do you mean? I told him what to do. And I'm like, okay. Here's, the hard part is actually getting stuff done. Like not showing up and being like, okay, great. You need to do a marketing and branding avatar workshop. Okay, great. Making those people do those things
Right.
is half the job of being a consultant and a coach, right? And doing it in a way that allows it, right? So the worst example is you're a consultant who's like, well, guys, we should do this thing. We should do this thing. We should do this thing. But you don't ever actually push to get that thing done. You're going to get fired. You're
Yeah.
going to get let go. You're going to
Yeah.
get fired as a consultant because you didn't actually get any change made. You didn't actually improve their situation. You can stand on that hill and be like, well, guys, doing everything I can. I'm doing everything. No, you probably aren't.
Yeah, you're doing the wrong
Right.
thing.
Yeah. Yes. You're doing the
You're
wrong
not getting
things.
people in action. It's like the college kid that knows everything because they've taken 9 classes on it now. You're
Yes.
like,
Absolutely.
"That's
Absolutely.
great, man. Let's
Yeah.
get out there and see how that works."
Yeah. Most entrepreneurs will have a level or have a time frame where it's like, the work is enough, the leads are enough, whatever it is, right? Like the outcome in and of itself is enough. And it's like you find those same people never coming out of the commoditized version of the thing it is that they do, right? So they're always having to price their stuff around other people. They're always trying to like argue about scope creep and these things. It's just,
Yeah.
it's got to come up a level. It has to be done differently. You're not doing yourself a service by continuing to do it in ways that don't serve you, right? So if you hate
Yep.
all your clients, probably need to be doing something
That
differently.
might be why. And there's probably some bigger problems if you hate all your
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why did you take their money if you hate them? Well, I thought it was going to be. I thought once they saw the work, it would be good. It
Yeah.
never is.
Yeah, I figure I
Never,
could
ever,
change
ever
the way
is.
they do things, once I got in there,
Yeah. Nah.
All
Mm-mm.
right, well,
This was a
I've
good
got
chat.
it has been. I've got heavy meetings today, but not mostly with clients. So they're mostly internal meetings, or I've got role playing today, which I'm excited
Nice.
about,
Mm-hmm.
and a
Man, you're
whole
turning
bunch.
into like a role play machine, which I'm pretty excited about. Like, have your thoughts on like role play and practice changed with this role at all?
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know how they couldn't without, because if you're not role playing regularly, because I used to role play sporadically, right? It was more like around I'd learn something new and I'd find people who are doing it and we'd role play while we
Mhm.
were learning. But this is like ongoing, right? I'm not going to not have role plays anymore in this at this job, you know.
Yeah.
So it's like it's like everything else that you do it for a weekend versus 6 months. Like all of a
Yeah.
sudden, these new things start happening, and you have new appreciations, and it's like we started the full circle. Like we started the episode with today was when you read books about subjects you already know, you go, yep, 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 yep.
Hmm.
Ooh, that's interesting. Let's
Yes.
stop there. So that's the same
Yeah.
thing with role play.
It is. I mean, I have the curse of knowledge. Have the curse of knowledge. People in sales lab, have the curse of knowledge if they're showing up regularly. Like
Mm,
Dylan, Dylan is just in there, right? Like, he's Mr. Regular when it comes to sales practice lab, right?
right.
Because, he sees value in it and it helps and all this stuff. But like it it changed like when it's no longer nerve-wracking, uncomfortable,
Yep.
or anything else like this, and it's just practice.
Yep.
Like
That's when
even
you
in
get
front
fun.
of a group of people, like you're talking about this stuff differently than you were before you started this role,
Yeah.
right? Like significantly different,
Yeah.
which I think is rad and is a testament to like consistent reinforcement training, right? Like get them up to the level and then figure out, okay, great. It might not need to be 4 hours a day. It might need to be like 1 hour a week or 2 hours a week, sales practice lab. But when you have these things and your people are keeping that polish, they're just improving, 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 improving. And then you have all the other connected benefit to that, right? Because when your whole team is kind of on the same page, they're calling each other out and like hopefully in like a coaching way. Hey, are you concerned about this? Hey, what do you think is
Yep.
going to happen over here and everything? And then everybody improves. But don't take it for granted because you're
Mm.
busy. Everybody's busy, but we all carve out times for the things that are super important. And if you're a salesperson, practice should be important.
Yep. 100%. Copywriting too. I think copywriting is another great
Oh
example
man,
of that.
absolutely. Yeah, we talked. Yeah, on Friday. Man, Ricky Pearl, dude, that was a great interview.
That was a great interview.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. I actually went back and watched some of it again this weekend. Just I was
Oh,
sitting around.
I watched the whole thing. I saw my stutters. I saw the things that I need to work on and improve upon. Like I don't even get uncomfortable watching my sales calls now. I get very uncomfortable when I go back and I rewatch our shows,
Yeah. Yeah.
especially the interview shows.
Yeah.
Whenever we both get excited and we just kind of talk over each other and talk over the other person and stuff. So
Yeah.
like I am going like I go back and I watch all of them. Like Friday afternoon, I'm in there watching the interview in the morning and being like, "Ooh, I could do that better. I really hated how I said that," and things like that. So yeah,
Yeah. Yep. It becomes addicting. You're like, I want to see what I did. I got to get in there and see it. So,
yes,
yep.
yes, that is
That's true,
true.
Dylan.
That
It
is
goes
true,
both ways
Dylan.
for sure.
Yep, absolutely.
Yep.
All right, man. Let's get into our day because we'll keep talking all day for sure.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Cool. All right. So you got a bunch of meetings today. Do you need to check in or anything this afternoon?
Not for today's, because it's a lot of planning and
Okay.
resetting and Q4ing, right? Because we're
Mm-hmm.
till 26. We have 4 days left in the
Yeah,
quarter.
something like that.
So
Yeah.
we're heavy into those conversations, like finalizing and stuff like that. So
Are you changing
yep.
anything this week as far as your bill bet?
I don't remember what the bill bet was.
You were very very big on the diet and the workout plan the last time we were
Oh
talking
yes, yes,
about
yes.
this.
Well, new greens. So
New greens, okay.
that's yes. So I'm that's going to be heavy this week. Every day this morning, first thing will be the
Mm-hmm.
greens, and then I'm already in a routine now. So I'm hitting the gym 5 days a week, and Scarlett is
Whoa.
with me, and she's like I said, I think I maybe had said last week, she's also driving a fair bit of the motivation. So I don't
Mm-hmm.
have to be. It's like having a good, when you have a good gym partner, it makes it easier to be in the gym.
For sure.
So those two things are going pretty well. It still comes back to actual mealtime for me, actual what goes on my plate, because still get to choose
Yeah.
what I cook and what I went to the store yesterday. way heavier on the vegetable side than I
Mhm.
normally do. So no,
Yep.
so that the check-in's probably going to be: did you eat everything that you buy at the store, or did you order out? Did you DoorDash, or did you hit your freezer? That's it. That's what you can ask me on Friday.
Okay. Okay. I
Yeah.
will I will be mindful of that. Let me write this on my super secret part of my whiteboard over here that doesn't show up on the camera. DoorDash
Versus freezer.
versus freezer.
Yep. Yep. Okay. What's yours this week?
Um, so last week we started to kind of convert some space in the garage, right? We're trying to get some stuff out of there and everything, and we have this fridge that is like broken, so we're gonna be putting that out because it's bulk pickup week. So we're gonna put that out there and then list it because I just want it gone.
Yeah.
And then the goal is to have the mats out there, have a little bit of place so that way I can do some movement, do some things. And so that's a goal for this week. And then also just movement, right? Like I get very keeping the movement thing is hard for some reason, right? Because I get very like I just want to get in here and get to work, right? Well, I need to have some movement before coming into work, and and little things like that. So I just need to be a little bit more mindful. So the goal this week is to get that fridge out of there and have that space in the garage. So that way I can go out and just like do some movement and some like just mobility stuff. Like also have space to do some like jujitsu mobility, which is like rolling and a different level of mobility and stuff like that. So that's one of the goals for this week. The rest of this week is we have some very cool in-person meetings. Melissa and I both do with like a couple of our clients to kind of go over, who they want to be talking to, catch ups and stuff like that. And so Melissa is going to be with me in both of those meetings. So that'll be fun and exciting.
Yeah.
Melissa turned in a project for one of her early clients, and the client was like, "This is so amazing. I don't even have any edits for you. So let me think on it and make sure that that's true." But which is obviously huge, right? Because when you can deliver something that meets the expectation on the first one, right? That's especially when you're new, right?
I always get
That's
scared with
huge.
those because I'm like, they're going to come back later. They have to. There's no way I can do this the first time. There's no way.
So that was cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, like it's kind of a regular week. Nothing too crazy. Yeah, nothing too crazy. I need to move some stuff around a little bit. Ooh, that's a good question.
I do that as well. Problem is I still order.
So you'll open the fridge and have those like 5 little containers like already parceled out, and you're still just like, you know what? I'm still gonna order.
Yeah, because clearly it's not a matter like that. That's the first step, right? First step is creating an environment where you can succeed.
Mm-hmm.
Second step is overcoming whatever interior stuff is going on that causes you to want to still make the bad choice. Because there are certain days I'm like, I want pizza, period. I don't care that I'm about to waste this thing that's sitting right in front of me in my fridge.
What's so crazy is I guess that was before the pandemic, I was doing a lot of Snap, right? And they do those kind of like little bitty pre-packaged foods.
Yeah.
And like I never wanted to order over eating the snaps that I had gotten, right? And maybe that was because like I was buying them versus like making them myself or something like that. I don't know how much that plays a part.
Maybe.
I'm kind of curious how far you're going in the preparation thing, because like these are just so completely done. You just put them in the microwave for like a minute or something like that, and then you're ready to go. If you're like, okay, great, I've got my frozen meat and frozen veg over here, like parceled out and ready to, like, you still like that's a fair amount of cooking.
No, I've done personal chef. I've hired a personal chef and had them actually make meals in front of me and put them in my fridge, and that worked pretty well because everything was really good. It tasted awesome. That was probably when I was at my best. And then I'll do my own. Depends. I had a buddy who's trying to become a big private chef, and he needed reps.
Okay,
so
there you go.
I was like, how much you want? He was like, I'll charge you this much over. You go buy the groceries, and I'll just pay this much per meal. And I'm like, okay. So I couldn't afford that probably any other way, but maybe I could. I just have to budget a different way.
Interesting.
Anyway, point being, when I meal prep, I literally go and cook on the weekends, and then so I reheat what I cook. So it's not just like some unappetizing frozen looking things in there.
Dylan asked a good question. Do you look forward to eating the food you prepared?
Okay, well, so this is where I know we can get deep into this. I've done lots of thoughts and journaling and all sorts of stuff about this. I eat for enjoyment. I don't eat for fuel, right? And I know when you eat for fuel, you don't deal with this as much because it's just an input, right? You just put it in the body and you put the best fuel you can in your body, so you get that right. I love this about me. I love food. I love food so much,
and
so
I thought I liked food, folks. And then there's you're like that food motivated dog that like you shouldn't touch the bowl like when you're pushing the bowl because like the dog just not intentionally angry, just don't mess with its food.
Don't mess with my food.
Yeah.
That's
crazy.
No. The difference is as I've gotten older, I've been able to control those urges a lot more just because I know I want to do what's best for my body. But I still, still don't touch my bowl because it might be one of those days. You never know.
That's amazing. I love that.
So Dylan, yes, I try to cook food that I like, but honestly, when you're meal prepping, I'm not cooking 5 gourmet meals. I'm cooking 3 of one and
5 chicken breasts.
4,
absolutely.
Yes.
That is fascinating. That's a puzzle.
But we're in advanced mode here, right? Because I mean, if most people, in fact, I do this with my workouts and whatnot. People will try and ask me about workouts and nutrition and stuff like that. I'll be like, I do this and this and this and this. I'm like, oh my gosh, how do you do all that? I'm like,
yeah, there is that.
Bro. What are you talking about? Like, I'm talking about on that meal, I did this thing and I'm mad. Yeah,
so, there is, I was sharing with someone about like the Pavlok with the shock bracelet with the software that like measures my like facial expression and stuff like this, and they were like, huh? And I'm like, they're like, do you make all of your clients do this? I'm like, no, this is how I train. Like this is what I need to improve and to keep myself kind of like on an improvement path. Most people don't need this. Like for most people, that's way too much kind of feedback and noise, while you're trying to run a good sales call.
Exactly. Yeah, you just keep kind of up in the ante the further you go down the path.
For sure. Yeah. That's how the karate guys end up breaking 17 bricks and not just like 2.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, thanks for the questions, Dylan. I'm happy to chat more about it, actually.
Yeah.
So hit me up in Slack. But
for sure.
But I'm to the mindset level at this point.
Yeah, and you're probably arguably like way too hard on yourself, right? Because like it's probably like one of those things where like Jake will probably be great like 6 days in a row and then miss 1 day and then be good for 14 days and he's still just like being that 1 day. Just mad and seething about it.
And for my nutrition, I'm not there yet. That's
really?
why I'm obsessing about it a bit. Yeah, I'm very what's the words like this with my nutrition. Like not to you hear the traditional like I lost 25 pounds and then I gained it back.
Yeah,
I don't do that, but like to the.
So your cycles are tighter.
My cycles are tighter, and I more consistently eat things I shouldn't. I just don't binge.
I think that the cycle tightening is indicative that you're about to like come up a level though, right? Because like think about how most people they're gonna go eat terrible for a year and then be like, ooh, New Year's resolution time. Ooh, right? I need to lose some of this weight, guys. I've been hanging out in the sweatpants for too long. Well, great. If you can eat one bad meal and the next day be like, you know what, I shouldn't have eaten that. Right? You're already ahead of 90% of the thing, right? If you can finish a sales call and immediately be like, you know what, I forgot to ask this and this and this. Great. Okay, cool. You're beating everyone else who's just like, you know what? They wanted it. Like,
Yeah. Well, and that's the next level of it too, is I can do that, but then I'll still go eat like crap or I still go do the thing the next day, even though I know I shouldn't do it. So that's the next level. You have people like, oh, self-awareness, first step. Like, but if that's where you stop, then it's garbage. Who cares? I suck.
Yeah.
I suck.
Yeah.
I suck.
Well,
like, okay, what are you doing?
Self-awareness, like once you become aware of a thing, right? And then you can choose to improve it or you can choose to like be held hostage by it. Well, like I just don't have good genes, or like that's just easier for you, or like that sure must be lucky, or any of the things we tell people.
Yeah.
Because we're not at the same level that they are.
Yep. You just haven't hit that next spot.
But man, I like the idea because I never really thought about that until right now. But like the sooner you can realize that you've done something wrong and get back on the path, like to me, that's means that you're working in the trajectory you want anyway.
Yeah. That's a great metaphor, Dylan. Exactly. Because I'd much rather have a good batting average and hit less home runs, in life at least.
Yep. Babe Ruth struck out more than he hit.
Yep. That's true.
So I wonder how many times he walked out there and he was like, he pointed with the bat and then missed.
Yes.
Like,
yeah, we get the story about the one he connected on.
yeah, exactly. Like, did that happen 500 times? And he's just like, well, it doesn't really matter, but let me just point anyway, just in case it happens, kind of thing.
No, I was just spinning the bat. You misread.
Yeah, that's how I warm up.
Yes.
Right. It just looks like I'm pointing, but
Yeah.
I'm actually just warming up.
Yeah. And then the one he actually connected on, he wasn't even pointing. He was just spinning the bat. Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Case study. Babe Ruth points in this direction and then hits a home run. Causation.
Yes. Causation to correlation.
Oh man. Okay, we gotta go.
Yeah, we go. Yeah, I definitely gotta go now, actually.
Thanks to Dylan, thanks to Michelle, thanks to Mike Tao, Mr. Regular. You guys are awesome. Thanks for coming to hang out with us this morning. And we will see you guys on Friday. We will have a guest. It's a surprise for now because we have to go find them. But yes, we will have a guest on Friday. It'll be awesome. And we'll see you guys then.
All right, guys. Thanks, Bill. See you later.
Thanks, Bill. See you, man.